Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 word and to some post-sprint waffle from Qatar. Hope you're all doing well this Saturday. It's evening here in the UK, afternoon, morning, wherever you are in the world. Did you enjoy that one? I think that was possibly... It's up there as one of the best sprints we've seen. I'm not a massive fan of them, but I thoroughly enjoyed that one. Very entertaining. Helped massively by a tyre offset. We'll get into that in just a moment. We're going to talk a lot about tyres today. And a victory for Oscar Piastri, which has been overshadowed by another story. The picture will probably give it away. It's quite obvious. Max is doing all the work there. I don't need to say it. But a victory that... this is the problem with the sprints for me. I don't want to start with a negative. We're not really being negative. I'm very happy for Oscar, but it's a win that doesn't really mean anything in the record books. It's great in terms of the fact it's 8 points, and that battle with Aston Martin is going to be huge between now and the end of the season, so that's a massive 8 points, but it still feels like, well done, Oscar, but tomorrow's the big one. So hopefully, no disrespect to anybody else, it'd be nice to see him maybe build on this tomorrow and take the win. So I'm not being negative. I'm very happy for Oscar, but this is the problem with the sprints. People talking about his first F1 win when actually, officially, it isn't. Bless him. So he's a good lad, and I'm really, really happy for him. Big talent as well. But we've got to start with the massive talking point. We have to. And this is why I feel a little bit for Oscar, because it has all been overshadowed, and I've just gone and said that about him as well. But Max Verstappen is officially, brace yourself, it's huge news, a triple Formula One world champion. Who saw that coming? What a season as well. He joins the likes of, you're probably sick of hearing this, but we're going to do it anyway, Jack Brabham, Jackie Stewart, Niki Lauda, Nelson Piquet, and Ayrton Senna on 3 titles. He's breathing down the neck of Alain Prost and Sebastian Vettel, who have 4 each. Got a great shot of doing that next season. And this season, his stats are... well, I mean, phenomenal. And they're only going to get better, aren't they? 10 poles, 13 wins with an 81.25% win rate. 81.25% of the wins this season. 15 podiums, 7 fastest lap, 2 sprint wins, and now 3 sprint podiums, or 4 sprint podiums, now. Absolutely unbelievable. Thoroughly deserved as well. He's been unstoppable all season. Though a lot of people were talking after Checo had won the sort of 2 of the opening 4 races. Oh, come on, Sean, Checo's in this. And I was trying not to laugh in your face, with all due respect. But I never saw it happening, and it was pretty obvious to me this guy was gonna win a world championship this season again. And just phenomenal driving. Great stuff today as well to come back. He fell back at the start, came back through and managed to get 2nd place, and probably a little bit frustrated he couldn't win, but Piastri's pace was actually pretty solid as well towards the end. But great stuff from Verstappen. It's mind-boggling to me, the season he's had, and it's also quite mind-boggling to me as well that he doesn't seem to get. And I think this maybe we've talked about this on the channel before. I think maybe this is because of the fact he's still racing. It's sort of the same with Hamilton to a lesser extent now. It was the same with Schumacher. Vettel was the same. People are coming around now on a bit more on him now, but he doesn't seem to get that respect he deserves for winning 3 world titles. You don't do that by accident. The last 2 seasons have been phenomenal. That intense battle in 2021, we'll not get into that. We know where it ended, but 2021, he won that championship. 22, brilliant turnaround after a difficult start. And this year, start to finish, pretty much perfect. So, I mean, what more can you say? He's a phenomenal talent. And I was thinking sort of before I went live, one of the phrases I like to say on this channel a lot is, if you'd have asked me so many years ago. Max Verstappen is one of those drivers that if you'd asked me back in 2018 or even 2017 when I started doing the channel, do you think he will be a triple world champion? I'd have probably said yes. It wouldn't have surprised me if you said to me in 2023 he will be a 3-time world champion. I'd have gone, well, yeah, probably. He's one of those drivers. I think I was the same with Lewis Hamilton. I think, people would have been the same with Michael Schumacher. I'm sure going back even further, people would have felt the same about drivers like Senna when they saw them racing. But he's absolutely in a conversation with these great drivers. He's absolutely deserving of this world championship. And I'm so pleased for him. Did a little dance as he went across the line. Always good to see. And like I said a minute ago, who's going to bet against him next year? Really phenomenal from Max, and just massive congratulations to him. To everyone at Red Bull, of course, they won the Constructors in Japan. Looking at today as a whole, really kind of made the right call, didn't he, with the medium tyres at the start after he sort of fell back, and the soft runners came through because they got the better grip off the line, better after the safety cars as well. Right decision to go with the mediums. It all came to him, took the fight to Piastri, or tried to, and it didn't quite work out for him today, but still, it was over as soon as Perez crashed, which we'll get to in a bit, I'm sure, or Perez was crashed into, actually, is probably a fairer assessment of that situation, isn't it? Perez crashed into rather than Perez crashed, but again, we'll get to that in a second. But he was world champion at that moment. Team didn't tell him over the radio, which isn't a great surprise. I don't think you would you? I mean, if you were a team boss, tell me in chat. If you were team boss, would you have said to your driver in the middle of a sprint race when he's trying to chase down Piastri or catch Russell for 2nd place, whatever was happening at the time, would you be on the radio going, don't worry, mate, you're world champion now, chill out? You wouldn't, would you? You want to let him race. So it doesn't matter now what he does between now and the end of the season. I would quite like to see him get to 16 wins so he breaks his own record. And I think just because I'm a bit of a history stats weirdo, I'd quite like to see him go on to break the record for, biggest win percentage in the season and that kind of thing. So get some more records. But phenomenal stuff again. That's about the 5th time I said phenomenal. I said it earlier this season. I'm running out of words to describe how good this year has been for him. So well done to Max Verstappen. I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit more. We'll get to a bit of Q&A later. I'm sure I have some questions for me on Verstappen. I'm sure there'll be some questions about other things as well. Lots I want to get through today, though. That's why I want to start with Verstappen. Just to sort of congratulate him on that one and say what I needed to say. I'm still processing it. There's a lot more I'm sure I'll be able to say, and I might say some more tomorrow in the race reaction when that crops up. But loads of other stuff to talk about today. We'll get to Piastri in a moment. We've got Tyre talk with what went on today with the FIA. I was quite angry this morning, but I've chilled out now and I've sort of gone through it a bit more and calmed down like you do. Of course, we'll talk about Andretti as well, and I'm sure some of you want to talk about drivers like Lance Stroll and Logan Sargent, but we will get to that if we get time. But yes, Oscar Piastri. Verstappen's the headline, isn't he, with the World Championship, even though it's been coming since, well, probably Miami. You could argue Bahrain. It's been a long time coming. We've known it's coming, but it's still the big headline. But Oscar Piastri, whether it counts in the record books or not, he still won a race today. His first win in F1, first time his sprint winner as well. Great performance. Great in the sprint shootout as well to take pole for... It's not pole position. This is what I hate about them. As a stats person, I hate this. P1 in the sprint to start from P1 for the sprint race. Whatever they're calling it. And brilliant lap. Yes, Norris made a mistake, but Piastri didn't. So we've got to give him the credit there. Decent starts. Soft tyre runner. I think George Russell got past him pretty swiftly, actually. Yes, he did. Well, I did write down lap 3. Russell managed to get through on those soft tyres. Piastri did seem to brake quite early. I don't know if Piastri braked early for Russell to make that move, or if Russell just braked stupidly late. I'm not quite sure. So maybe a bit of both. Maybe Piastri could have gone deeper, but the mediums weren't really working at that point. The softs were definitely the tyres to be on for the first few laps of the race, and that kind of made it look like Russell might get his first win since Brazil. And then Piastri came back and managed to overtake him again on lap 11, I believe it was. Yes, it was lap 11, because the soft tyres falling away by about lap 10. It was worth a gamble, I think, for a Russell who was on the softs at the start. So we had Russell, Sainz, Leclerc, Alonso, Ocon, Gasly, Stroll, Sargent. It was worth a gamble on the softs, but they were always going to fall away, and they did around lap 10. I mean, half the race, was it about half the race was behind a safety car? So that's disappointing. Always disappointing. I don't mind safety cars because it means something's happened and it's going to bunch to pack up, and something's going to happen after that as well with some overtaking. But I think half the race it felt like was behind the safety car. So, yeah, it felt like that. If it wasn't, then I'm sorry. It's not an official stat or anything like that, but it certainly felt like it watching it. Thank you to Cardi as well for your super chat. Sorry, I was a bit slow to that one. Says nonsensical amount of safety cars, nice world championship for Max, and a lovely win for Piastri. Anyhow, McLaren has given me hopes for a good battle next year. Bring it on. For now though, Max, super Max. I'm not singing it. Thank you very much, Cardi, for your super chat. Appreciate the support as always. And hello, I should say to you as well. Hello, thank you. Yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, so just the soft tyres were always going to fall away. They did, and then Piastri got back through and kind of didn't really look back, did he? That was kind of it, really. He pulled away from Russell quickly because he had to, because you didn't want Russell to come through. You didn't want Verstappen to have, get past Russell, and there is Piastri straight away. He built the gap 2.5 seconds, something like that, and was 1.8 seconds clear over the line. And Verstappen was only a couple of tenths of a lap quicker, couple of tenths of a second. That's what I'm trying to say, a lap quicker. So actually, Piastri looked pretty comfortable out front. So fantastic performance from him all weekend so far. And McLaren, I agree with Cardi. I'm very excited for next season. I think that at the moment, you'd easily argue that, or you could easily argue that McLaren are probably the closest contender to Red Bull for the rest of this season and maybe into next year. The problem is Mercedes, Ferrari, how are they going to come back next year? McLaren need to keep building on this. They have got their wind tunnel now, though, which is very exciting, and it's great for them. And Norris as well, third. I know that he was a bit flat yesterday after qualifying, or after the sprint today. He felt there could have been 2 poles for him, or 2 P1s for him. So a bit frustrated he's making the mistakes, but it's big, what McLaren need to focus on. And I know Norris won't want to be beaten by his teammate too consistently. He won't want this to become a regular thing. Norris seems to have the upper hand on a Sunday, but he doesn't want this to start to turn. Of course he doesn't. But the priority for McLaren is just getting those cars to the finish in the highest points-paying position they possibly can, which sounds like an obvious statement because that should be the goal of every team. But you know what I'm getting at. If they want to have this battle with Aston Martin or Pip Aston Martin, and I think... I wasn't so sure the other week when we were talking about it on one of these streams, but I think looking at the constructors now, McLaren have 186 points, Aston Martin 221. They're scoring so many points now, McLaren. I think Aston Martin are going to be very, very lucky if they finish any higher than 5th this season now, which seems crazy when you think of where they were at the start of the season. And... yeah, you can immediately make the argument, where would they be with a better or a higher or a better performing second driver? But with the way McLaren are scoring right now, the way Ferrari came back a little bit, Mercedes turn around, Red Bull running away, would they have hung on to sort of 3rd, 4th place anyway? Maybe. We'll never know. We'll maybe do that in the winter. Maybe go through the winter and have a look at what points were lost and where they, what Aston Martin could have done. But it'll be difficult to tell, really. But great stuff from McLaren today as well. I won't go through the whole order. I don't do in these post-sprint waffles. If you're new to these, I do a few notes on the race, go through those, and then obviously come back and yeah. You'll say to me, what about this? And then we'll come back to that later. But that's that great result for Mercedes as well. 3rd, 4th and 5th place. Talked about Russell taking Piastri on the lead at at the start, and then losing out to him. Hamilton did well, actually. Where did he start, Lewis? 12th, so actually 5th place. I know the mediums really came to those drivers late on, but that's a really good recovery as well for some points. And I think actually Sergio Perez might be a bit more nervous than I thought he would be in that P2 battle in the Constructors. But like I say, it was the tyre offset that made for an interesting, entertaining race today. And I hope we get that tomorrow. But I think with everything going on with the tyres, the longer race, more points up for grabs, it's unlikely that drivers are going to take as much of a gamble on the softs tomorrow as they have today. So I don't think we're going to get the tyre offset. But you never know. You never know. Somebody might try it. We will talk more about tyres in a bit, though, because there's quite a bit to get over, to go through on that one. The big incidents of the race. Yes. Liam Lawson. Oh, Liam. Lost it all on his own, straight in the gravel. Looked like it was a little bit offline, or completely offline, you could argue. Lost it. It was quite dusty out there. I'm not making an excuse. It's a mistake. About the first mistake he's made in his short time in F1, so we'll let him have that. Into the gravel, out of the race. No contact. That was game over. That brought out the first safety car. Second safety car, Logan Sargent. I didn't see a replay of that one. We saw lots of replays today, but I didn't see a replay of the Sargent one. I believe, did he lose it on his own as well? Let me know in chat. I feel like he did. I don't think there was contact. That brought out another safety car. And then there was another incident with Perez, Hülkenberg, and Ocon. Like I say, that crash with Perez. He did do it on his own, did he, Warden? Thank you. And Yinka confirming as well. Yeah, it was a mistake from Sargent on his own. But that incident there was the one that crowned Verstappen world champion, or confirmed the world championship title, really. A bit of a weird one. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Singapore 2017. A little bit. Not quite for the high stakes, but, you know, a little bit like that. Hülkenberg's in the middle. Ocon's on the left, the inside. Perez is on the right. Ocon kind of comes across, which he's going to do. Hülkenberg's there in the middle. Nothing Hülkenberg can do, really, because he's got Perez on the outside. If he goes to Perez, he's going to hit Perez. If he stays where he is, he's going to get hit by Ocon. So he kind of has to just go, I'll take this. Tries to back out of it. You can see he does back off, and then Ocon hits him. Ocon then kind of spins after that contact and then hits Perez, and that took Perez out of the race. So I saw a conversation going on before the stream. Some people saying that Perez shouldn't have been out there, but I'm never, ever, because I honestly, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I hate that argument. I remember Singapore the other year, quite a few years ago now, actually, when Perez was on the inside of turn 2 or 3 and Ocon was on the outside and he stuck Ocon in the wall and everyone, Ocon shouldn't have been there. Well, no, Perez shouldn't have stuck him in the wall. Like, as Azerbaijan this year, Russell clunked the curb and hit Max Verstappen. Well, Verstappen shouldn't have been there. No, Russell shouldn't have hit Verstappen is actually what you're trying to say. So I've got no issue with Perez being on the outside. But he's going to take more risks as well because he's under pressure and he's frustrated and he wants to get through the field. He's in a quicker car. But round the outside, he's not to know, unless he went back and watched maybe some F1 replays, he's not to know that Esteban Ocon is going to hit Hülkenberg. He's not to know that when Ocon does hit Hülkenberg, he's going to spin into him. So there's nothing wrong. Perez, for me, takes no blame there. I don't really blame Hülkenberg either, apart from, kind of to use an argument from Singapore 2017 for Verstappen on Hülkenberg, other than evaporate or slam on the brakes. There's not a lot he can do because Ocon's coming over and the pinch is always going to happen. And then Ocon kind of comes across. So if you have to put blame on anybody, you'd probably put it on Ocon. But for me, and I'll be honest, when Karun Chandok said in commentary, it's a 3-1 doesn't go racing incident, I call BS. I said that's nonsense because the offboard looks like Ocon almost swings across, but I think it's just the camera angle because the onboard of Hülkenberg, Ocon's just edging across, and it's. I think if you have to, and some people for some reason have to apportion blame, but if you have to, then you would Ocon. But I think that's a racing incident for me. It's just one of those, and Perez is the unfortunate victim, I suppose, and Hülkenberg as well, and that took all three of them out of the race. So game over. So they were your retirements: Lawson, Sargent, Perez, Ocon, and Hülkenberg. It's an interesting one, but I don't agree with people who think a driver shouldn't be on the outside. They're racing. It's again same with Russell and Verstappen, same with Perez and Ocon, same with anybody in that situation. Especially when you then see somebody else drive around the outside and there's no incident. You know, I don't see an issue with it, so it's just frustrating. I think social media would be going wild right now if that was Verstappen Hamilton and Norris or something, but I don't think anybody really cares that it's Perez, Ocon and Hulkenberg, which sounds terrible, but it's kind of how I feel sometimes when I look at F1 Twitter in particular. Unless it's a big one at the front, nobody really cares. But yeah, let me know what you think. If you think that should have been a penalty for anybody, I think racing incident is about the fair call. We are waiting for a decision on that, by the way, from the FIA. I will let you know if that comes through. Oh, it has. Oh, no, we have got some stuff here. Oh, goodness me. What's going on here? Hang on. Bear with. We have some 5-second time penalties, but not for that incident. Charles Leclerc, 5-second time penalty imposed after the sprint for leaving the track without justifiable reason multiple times. And car 18 also has a 5-second penalty. That's Lance Stroll, whose weekend is just going from worse to worse, for exactly the same thing, leaving the track without justifiable reason multiple times. So that, I can't update the graphics on screen, I'm afraid, because I'd have to go silent for 5 minutes and that would annoy people more. So you'll have to just cope with the fact that people are out of position and points might have changed, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. But that means that, let me get my thing back up. There we go. So that would mean Leclerc, 5-second penalty. Ooh, falls behind Albon. So that's another point for Albon. Drops behind Alonso, and that's a point for Alonso. Would fall behind Gasly as well, so that's 1.8. Was Albon only 4 thousandths behind Leclerc of the line? Wow. Anyway, he would actually drop to at least 12th here, possibly 13th. Leclerc, so no points. Essentially, is the story there. Albon gets another point, so there we go. That's official now. It is a penalty, 5-second time penalty for Leclerc. That's because I think Albon said over the radio, didn't he? I believe that Leclerc had gone off several times on the final lap. So I can read you the decision if you like. It's not really much. Stewards reviewed everything as usual. Car left the track on 4 occasions without justifiable reasons. That's for Leclerc, so that is a 5-second time penalty. And yeah, exactly the same answer for Stroll. So there you go. Penalties for them. So, yeah, the graphics are wrong on screen, unfortunately, but I run these on my own, so you'll have to just cope. Leclerc won't move anywhere in the championship. He just drops a couple of points. And Albon, I don't think he moves up in the championship either, to be fair. I think he would just gain, and it's one more point, isn't it? Yeah, one more point for the position. So Albon would go from 22 points to 23 points, I believe. So well done to Alex Albon, who, by the way, is having such a good season. I don't give him enough credit for what he's doing, but we'll keep an eye on the other decisions. Hulkenberg, Perez, and Ocon are all with the stewards, so I'll let you know when that comes in, if it is before the stream ends. But yeah, they're the big talking points, I think, from the race itself. Just a couple of people to pick out, because I like to do that. Like I say, Hamilton, really good comeback from 15th, I think it was on the grid, I said, didn't I? Or 12th, from way down the grid, basically. 12th place, up to 5th place. Alex Albon, great stuff, actually, from 17th to 8th. I think he was another one that took, or got a big advantage from the fact the soft tyres fell away so quickly, and he was able to come through on the mediums. Good stuff from him. Alonso Norris, thoroughly enjoyed that fight, by the way. Great stuff. And what else have we got? There's something else I want to talk about as well. Yeah, the pit stoppers. We did have Stroll, Magnussen and Zhou pitted under the final safety car, but it didn't really work out as hoped, really. What were the lap times like? 32.0 for Zhou on the last lap, 129.9 for Magnussen, 30.2 for Stroll. I don't think the softs are working well today, apart from those first few laps. Looking at those times, because they've only been on them for 8 laps and they're already gone at that point. They were 10 laps in the first part of the race, weren't they? I suppose that's why. But that's not really worked for them. But I think when you are so far down the order, the safety car comes out, you've got to try it. And I think, again, Mercedes, by the way, correct for not pitting Russell. I know Russell was talking about it and wanted to, but I think the right call, because he'd have dropped out the points and then he'd be frustrated. So at least he is P4. It's points on the board. The big ones tomorrow, though. George Russell, of course, if you didn't catch quali yesterday, starting on the front row after all the lap times were deleted. He will start on the front row alongside Max Verstappen. Obviously, Max Verstappen on pole, obviously. Lewis Hamilton 3rd, Fernando Alonso 4th, Charles Leclerc 5th, Piastri in 6th, Gasly 7th, Ocon 8th, Bottas 9th, and Norris in 10th place for tomorrow's race. So that, for me, I know McLaren fans will be frustrated with the track limits yesterday, but actually, that, for me, is quite a tasty grid. And seeing the McLarens coming through would be pretty much. I'll look forward to that one. I think that'll be a fun one to watch. So it gives us an interesting race, definitely. definitely. Let's have a look at chat then, and we'll talk about, if you've got anything you want me to talk about from the session that we had, the race we've had, then I will obviously prioritize that, but let me know what you're thinking in chat. We'll talk about qualifying yesterday. We'll look ahead to tomorrow as well. Sort of touched on qualifying yesterday. Want to talk about track limits. Want to talk about tyres. Want to talk about Andretti as well. And I'm sure if we get time, we'll get to Sargent and Stroll and maybe some Q&A as well. We'll see how we get on. I don't want it to be too long, these Saturday streams. 9 hours later, I'm still talking. Thank you to Shantanu as well for your super chats. As I keep forgetting he's a rookie, assuming there to Oscar Piastri. Thank you so much for your super chat and your support. Yeah, do you know what with Piastri? I completely agree. I completely agree. I will sit there, watch him win like that, and you're like, oh, well done, Oscar. And then you go, this is his first season, Sean. He's so impressive. And to go up against Lando Norris, who is, you listen to all those who know, you know, I know a lot about the history of F1 and the stats, and that's the kind of thing I enjoy. I'm just a fan who loves watching the racing. I'm not up on all the, you know, detailed analysis of drivers and cars and things like that, but from the people that are very good at that, they see Norris as a very, you know, one of those potentially generational talents. So for Piastri to hop in the car and be as close to him as he has been this year is so impressive, and he just seems to be getting better and better and better. But there's huge credit as well to McLaren for that. I remember saying after those first sort of 2 or 3 races this year, sitting on a race reaction stream or a midweek stream or a stream like this, just generally a stream I suppose, and talking about how they wouldn't, not writing this season off, but maybe this is going to be a transitional year because the wind tunnel comes online later in the year, and maybe they'll put more focus on 24 than 23 while still trying to recover. I'm glad they didn't. Unbelievable. What a turnaround from where they were. And now, with the wind tunnel online and everything for next year, they're in great shape. And I am confidently going to say, maybe not challenging Red Bull, because I still think Red Bull have got a big enough advantage next year to maybe not walk it as comfortably as this year, but to still win it with a race or 2 to go, at least. But I think McLaren will give them a run for their money next year and be in that sort of top 4 fight with Mercedes and Ferrari as well. And hopefully if Aston Martin can get it together, have a big fight, that'd be great. I'd love that. In fact, you know, if Red Bull do disappear with it next year again, which they may well, they may not, but if they do, we'll look at that next year. But if they do, then a really close fight between McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, and Aston Martin again would be fun. I'd be quite happy with that. It's a good consolation prize once the championship's done. Tomorrow will most definitely be decided by strategy, says Mary Hove. Completely agree. Tomorrow's going to be fascinating, especially, again, we'll get to this in a moment, if we do have the mandated 3 stops. So that'll be an interesting one. Tyres don't seem to be working in general this weekend, says Red Raven. They've been sloppy, haven't they? Just generally, or look sloppy. I think it's new surface, dusty track, hot conditions, the track layout changing every 3 minutes. That's an exaggeration, massive exaggeration. But I think things like that, yeah, they're really counting towards that. But do you know what? No, let's go to tyre talk, actually. I will do a good Q&A, don't worry. But let's just do tyre talk, because that leads me on to some points I wanted to make. Thank you, Red Raven. Throwing me off again. Disgusting. I'm joking. Yeah, so if you missed it today, I'm not going to go through it all because you're probably sick of Crofty and that talking about it if you're watching UK coverage or the Sky coverage. But essentially, following the analysis of tyres used during FP1 yesterday, I think they've done about 20 laps or something like that. Pirelli had noticed the separation in the sidewall between the topping compound and the carcass cords on many of the tyres that were checked, and that was discovered on those tyres. They were concerned after that. I didn't do a try. I should have done a segue. That's a disgrace. I'll tell you what, I have got something. We're gonna. Do you know what? Actually, I am gonna do this. I'll go back and do this again. I don't care. Right. Max Verstappen, 3-time Formula One world champion this weekend, official, which is really convenient because 3 is also the number of dry tyre compounds available across a race weekend. Oh yes, people, it is that time again. It is tyre talk time. There you go. So back to the point, just for you in chat. There you go. It's so cringe and I don't even care. Yeah, so the separation of the sidewall between the topping compound and the carcass cords on many of the tyres that were checked, and that was discovered. Mario Isola said that they checked it and actually it wasn't terrifying. If that they weren't concerned the tyres are about to fail. Apparently they're a long way away from failing. What they're worried about is what happens, or this is what it sort of translates to me, that they weren't close to failure. their concern is what's going to happen at 30 laps, 40 laps, that kind of thing. There is the potential for something to go wrong. So rather than waiting for something to go wrong, they decided to take action. It's to do with those bloody pyramid curbs, isn't there? 50 mil pyramid curbs that kind of ramp up the further out you go. And that's putting a lot of high vibration, and it's not good for the tyres, basically, is the real Sean terms, layman's terms, you could say. And it's causing these concerns. And what they basically decided to do was to paint a fake curb on part of the racetrack, I believe 80 centimetres. I'm looking at Red Raven just to confirm, might know. But yeah, 80 centimetres from the original track limits line to the new track limits line, painted some nice red and white paint, and that's now to try and stop the cars going right up on that pyramid curb bit. So that's the change they made at 12 and 13. They then got a 10-minute practice familiarization session. What the hell? 10 minutes, which was just pointless. I suppose it allowed drivers to go out and say, oh, yes, that's fine. I understand what that is now. But, I mean, come on. Ridiculous. And then they will do an extensive tyre analysis following the sprint of 19 laps to decide whether further action needed to be taken for the Grand Prix. Now, there are two things to point out here. First of all, we didn't get 19 hot laps today, did we, in the sprint? So I don't know if that may have to change now, whether they may implement these changes that they are considering just in case, or whether they will have enough data, because the longest stint today, I mean, the mediums ran for 19 laps, Piastri, Verstappen, Norris, but they weren't flat out. Half the race was behind the safety car, so they haven't got flat out tyre data, which will concern them, but they have got 19 laps. So they might just implement this anyway, just to be on the safe side rather than just assuming everything will be fine because they were okay after the sprint because it wasn't a flat out race. But if the issue is still evident after they've analysed the tyres, they're going to make a couple of changes for the race. So the tyre life parameter, I'll read it as a quote, must not exceed 20 laps for new tyres used in the race. This number would rise to 22 for any used tyres fitted in the race to account for in or out laps in qualifying. So new tyres, no more than 20 laps. Old tyres, no more than 22. All drivers will be obliged to perform at least 3 tyre change pit stops during the race. So it would be on new tyres, no more than 20 laps, maximum of 22 with the used tyres, and a guaranteed 3 pit stops. Which apparently Pirelli said that they could have gone with 2 because obviously 57 lap race, you don't need to do 3 stops to get there. But apparently they want to give options on strategies so everyone isn't just pitting at the same time, which kind of makes sense. So I sort of want them to implement this tomorrow because it might just... It's an opportunity as well for people to have a look at what mandatory multiple stops would mean, because there are a lot of people who want F1 to mandate 2 stops a race to try and open up strategy and get people, try and give us more action because they think that will. I'm not convinced it will. So having this tomorrow might actually be interesting, a great time to test it, especially with both championships decided now. Obviously other things to decide, but, why not give it a go? So we'll see what happens. But apparently, like I say, this isn't something that is a massive concern in that the tyres weren't about to explode, but they're concerned that the longer they run, particularly on those curbs. And actually, I will tell you actually this as well, because I think it's an important point to make. It's not the curbs themselves that were causing the issue, because we have curbs like this at other racetracks. It wasn't the curbs that were causing the issues. It's the amount of time and the amount of time they're on the curbs and the speed they're doing while they're on them. That was causing the problem. So we're still going to see these curbs everywhere, but we don't tend to see drivers that quick for that long across a curb like that, and that's what's caused issues there. So it feels, at the time, it was annoying this morning because it felt crazy to me that they could make a drastic change like that. And I think a few people were joking on Twitter, and I was thinking, could we end up with an Indy 2005 situation here? But the more Mario Isola, as I was corrected on Thursday, Mario Isola, the more he talked, the more it sounded like this was precautionary rather than these tyres are about to explode. So I'd rather they err on the side of caution. Again, give us those mandated 3 stops, see what happens tomorrow. It'll probably be dreadful. And if it is, then maybe that'll just calm the argument down a little bit that people like to have. But I think the other thing for me that was annoying, and I think needs to be considered, the drivers weren't happy. They found out at the same time as the media. Some found out from the media, apparently. They weren't impressed. And they weren't consulted. I think on grounds of safety, when it comes to tyres, drivers don't necessarily need to be consulted. I think Pirelli did the right thing, but I think the drivers are right to be a bit annoyed that they weren't at least spoken to before that was announced to the media and the teams. I think you've got to talk to the drivers on things like that because they drive them. But I think for me, what needs to be looked at in future, if you're going to make... Because the changes aren't insignificant to the track. As it turned out, it didn't make a massive change to the running order and wasn't a huge deal. It did make differences with track limits, but they're not insignificant changes. You're tightening corners. You're changing the profile of those corners and then giving drivers 10 minutes to acclimatise to them. For me, and maybe I'm alone on this one, if changes like that are going to be made to a circuit, particularly across a race weekend, then cars need to be allowed out of Parc Fermé. Because and that might be a controversial statement. I don't know. I've not spoken to anyone. It's just something that I was thinking this morning. Because if you've got a car that is excellent through the high-speed corners, and they've set that car up to be excellent through high-speed corner, let's not consider this weekend any other track, and then you then turn that into a much slower speed corner, then that team spent that 1 hour setting up a car for high-speed corners that no longer exist, and that could compromise them in the race. So if the FIA, Pirelli, whoever, can make significant track changes between sessions and cars are in Parc Fermé, I think they should be allowed out of Parc Fermé so that changes can be made to set up maybe a bit more downforce or anything they need to do. I know life isn't fair. Trust me, the last 18 months have been horrible, so I know life is not fair. But I think that would be a fairer way to do it. And maybe even rather than a 10-minute acclimatization session, maybe a 30-minute practice session. I don't like the Parc Fermé rules across a sprint weekend anyway. I've already said this 100 times on this channel, which is ridiculous because I've only had like 12 of them or whatever, but you know what I mean. It's an exaggeration. But I've said it loads. I don't like it. I don't think it works. I don't think that the sprint format works as it is anyway. I think it doesn't flow right for me in a race weekend. Today just feels like whatever. Great to see Max win the title. Fantastic to see Piastri get his win. But it's just, to me, again, for what feels like the millionth time, 90-minute practice session Friday morning. Plenty of time for teams to get set up. Sprint qualifying Friday afternoon. Sprint race Saturday morning. Normal qualifying Saturday afternoon. Normal race Sunday. Cars go into Parc Fermé at the start of sprint qualifying for sprint quali and the sprint race. Then after the sprint race, Parc Fermé is opened up. Drivers can make changes. Teams can make changes. Back into Parc Fermé for quali, because then you can have the weekend kind of builds to that big crescendo that is the Grand Prix on a Sunday. But it also gives teams the opportunity to separate the two out and not have... You can set up specifically for a sprint. You can set up specifically for a race in separate sessions. And I just think that's what I prefer. But largely, I just think this weekend, I'd have let them out of Parc Fermé. But I don't know how much of a rewrite of the rules that would require. So that's just... I know a lot of people like Parc Fermé. A lot of people don't. But it doesn't work across the sprint weekend. And I think today, if you're going to make big track changes, then... especially after just 60 minutes of practice on a resurfaced track that's not really been used much by F1, should have let them out again. But again, I don't know how much of a rewrite that needs. I don't know if that's something that can just go in the event notes, the race director's event notes, or whether that needs to be something that is rewritten. But that's not all for Pirelli, by the way. Can I just say, sometimes in Formula One, timings are perfect. Other times, not so much. All of that in mind, it's also been reported and largely expected to be completely true and confirmed next week, that Pirelli has extended its deal to be F1's sole tyre supplier until the end of the 2027 season with an option for 2028. So all of that drama around tyres, and it turns out they are going to get the sole tyre supplier contract until the end of 27 with an option for 28. F1, though, will apparently need a new supplier in 2029 because it is understood by the BBC, their sources telling them, that this will be Pirelli's final contract. Bridgestone are apparently the early favourites. I think I said that the other week, actually. According to BBC Sport, Bridgestone was approved as a potential supplier by the governing body, the FIA. But commercial discussions saw F1 chairman Stefano Domenicali choose Pirelli. The news is expected to be made official next week. Great timing, I said. So it sounds as though Bridgestone were approved by the FIA for 27 onwards. But no, it wouldn't be 27 onwards. 20. Yeah. When Pirelli's contract was up, they were approved, and then Domenicali felt that for commercial reasons they stick with Pirelli, which is fair enough. So we are going to get a new tyre supplier in 2029, if that's to be believed. That feels like forever away, but trust me, I don't know. The older you are, the quicker it goes, but that'll soon be here. I promise you that. So yeah, Pirelli are sticking around, and that I just that's just so perfectly timed by Formula One. These tyres aren't great. We're a little bit concerned they might go bang in the race. We're going to make these changes to the track. By the way, Pirelli, cracking job. Here's a new contract. But another thing that frustrated me today, and this is the point I really want to make, and then I'll come to you in chat, and then we'll do a bit on Andretti and a few other things as well. But just on the tyres, Pirelli has, I don't know, because I don't have all the information in front of me, and I don't know what's gone on behind the scenes at Pirelli. I don't know whether a more durable tyre would have prevented some of this from happening. But Pirelli has not once used the C0 this year, and it just sits there, ruining my tyre talk segues, because I have to say 6 instead of 5, and 5 so much easier to come up with. But it just sits there as a listed tyre that never gets used. The C1 this year is a softer compound, so it's softer than in 2021, which has not helped anything. But also, Pirelli have taken 3 sets of inters and 2 sets of wets or something like that to the desert again. Even if it had chucked it down with rain, pretty confident that track's going to dry very, very quickly. You'd never need more than the intermediates. When we go to new tracks with new surfaces, hot conditions, question marks over the curbs, especially given that Mario Isola also said, or Isola, sorry, also said they didn't have the time to check that the track was, didn't have time to check the circuit to see what the curves were like and things before they made the tyre nomination. Would it not make more sense for Pirelli to take the 3 compounds they've selected, the intermediates, and then maybe a couple of sets each for the teams instead of wet tyres, but of C0s or a harder compound, just in case they need them as a backup? If they're going to be transporting the tyres anyway, forget the wets, because you're not... I'm sorry, it may happen. We had drizzle in Abu Dhabi once, but it disappeared pretty much as soon as it arrived. It's unlikely it's going to be wet enough to need full wet tyres in the desert in Qatar. So why not replace those with a couple of sets of C0 per driver? So you've got a backup option if things like this happen. You say, right, I'm afraid, unfortunately, we're going to need to bring these because, or you're going to have to use these now instead of the C3s because the C3s are not holding on very well. We're concerned about safety, or whichever one it is. Here's a set of these. We're going to give you a 30-minute extra practice session. Go out and do a couple of laps on and get a feel for them, and we'll use them instead. I realise that's a bit of common sense, and I apologise for using it. Red Raven calling it out there. That's logic, Sean. We ain't doing that here, but it is a lot of what ifs, and I appreciate that. But if you're taking the wets anyway and you're not going to use them, just forget that and take the C0s instead. I mean, I've already said in these streams, it'd be great if Pirelli could find a way to find a tyre that is sort of between the inters and the wets that will still perform as up to a point as well as it can to an inter, but clears a bit more water in case it's a bit too wet, and then they could take fewer wet tyres to a race weekend, because it still just feels balmy to me that we take full wet tyres to Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, and Qatar. You want your full wets at Silverstone, of course you do, but I just don't see it baffles me. And I know that the one year they don't take the full wets, it's going to be monsoon weather in Bahrain or something like that. It'd just be sod's law, but it just seems balmy to me. So it's just a thought. It's probably not something that can be done. It's probably not a viable option, but it was just something that I thought of, that I thought I'd mention very, very quickly. So that's 45 minutes we've been going. Not bad. Got through everything I wanted to talk about with the sprint. If there's anything you want me to talk about from the sprint, let me know in chat. And we will, I'll answer some of those questions. We'll start the Q&A now, but we'll kind of do it over time because I want to talk about Andretti as well. But any questions about the sprint tomorrow, anything like that, we can do that. Like I say, looking forward to tomorrow's race. I think that's quite a spicy grid. I'll just remind people of that one who have just joined and maybe don't know. So Verstappen on pole, Russell second, Hamilton third, Alonso fourth, then it's Leclerc fifth, Piastri sixth, P7 for Piastri Gasly was what I was about to say there, but it's definitely just Pierre Gasly. 8th for Ocon, 9th for Bottas, 10th for Norris, 11th for Tsunoda, 12th for Sainz, 13th for Perez, 14th for Albon, 15th for Hulkenberg, 16th for Sargent, Stroll down in 17th, Lawson in 18th, Magnussen 19th, and Zhou Guanyu in 20th place. Actually, Zhou Guanyu, quite a... I don't know what happened, but not a great day at all. 4/10 off Magnussen in 19th yesterday. So I think a lot of them haven't been before, have they, in that bottom sort of group of drivers? So maybe that's part of the reason. Excuse me. It's not burping. It's, yeah. But yeah, a few of them haven't been Zhou's not been, has he? Lawson, Stroll will have been in 21. Sargent hasn't. Magnussen? Was he around in 21? No, he was off, wasn't he? He was having a year off from Formula One. Hulkenberg probably filled in, I can't remember. So quite a few didn't. So that bottom half maybe is not a great surprise when you think about it. So yeah, have a quick sip of my drink. Like I say, not burping, just grumbling and coughing for some reason today. You'll know when it's a burp. It'll be quite clear. Yeah, so I just check for penalties as well quickly before we roll on. See if anything's happened. No, just those two. Like I say, 5-second penalty for Leclerc and 5-second penalty for Stroll as well. So if you are just joining as well, that at the bottom is wrong. Leclerc is not in the points. Albon and Alonso move up a place. Leclerc falls behind them and some others as well. But yes. Down a 7-up and try not to burp. I can't do it. I'm terrible with that kind of thing. What's your reaction to the Lance drama, says Mary Hove. We'll come to that in a bit. I'll try and remember to do that one. I want to prioritise Andretti over that, but definitely want to talk about that a little bit because, yeah, a few people watching Strictly, which is I'm forced to watch Strictly when I go to my mum's at Christmas. She's like, "Oh, Sean, it's Strictly. Are you excited?" I'm like, "Oh, no." I'm really not interested in Strictly at all. So, yes. Do you agree with me that we'll see Lance move over to WEC soon? And Aston has announced that their Valkyrie will join the WEC hypercar class. Again, Red Raven, thank you very much for your question, mate. Remind me in a bit. We'll definitely talk about Lance Stroll. Anything about the sprint? If not, I will just start talking about Andretti and everything going on there. I still don't understand sprint quali, says April Kurtz. This week's or just generally? I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to separate sprints and Grand Prix out because a lot of people didn't like them. I didn't like them being involved in the Grand Prix at all. The race on Sunday, but it still feels like it doesn't feel. I don't get excited for sprint quali. You sort of have the main brilliant qualifying that we have on a Friday evening. You're like, oh, I love this, and then you get a really watered down crapper version on a Saturday morning. You think, is this worth getting out of bed for? I mean, it was at 2:30 in the afternoon here, so it was definitely worth getting out of bed for, because if I'm not up by 2:30, then Jesus, Sean, get a grip. But, you know, in general, but yeah. Do you think tomorrow we'll have as many safety cars and virtual safety cars as today, or will the racing be cleaner, asks Warden. I think it'll be cleaner. I mean, the mistakes might happen. You know, A. Lawson, for example, might make a similar mistake around turn 2 as he made today. So that is definitely possible. But I think we'll still see some action tomorrow, but there are more points on the board. There's more at risk, more to lose in a Grand Prix, particularly for sort of those top 10 drivers. So I think we'll still see a bit of action. But I don't think I've got Perez and Sainz as well need to come through the field from 12th and 13th place. So, and you could argue Stroll needs to come through the field as well from 17th in a car that should be much higher than 17th on the grid. But I think with so much to lose in terms of points, you'll see maybe fewer risks taken. It's a longer race as well. It's not worth a dive bomb unless you're sure of it, if that makes sense. Because if you do that on lap 2 or 3, and there's contact, your race is ruined. If you just sit back, play the long game, look after your tyres, like we see in races, that little lull we have in most Grand Prix where it starts exciting, then sort of dips away as they start to look after tyres, then picks up again. Maybe a bit more like that. But I don't know if we'll see. I don't think we'll see as many safety cars and virtual safety cars for that reason. But I hope we don't see too many because, well, maybe I don't know. TV direction felt weird today as well. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's just because I get a bit grumpy about sprints sometimes, but I thought it was a bit weird today. Lots of replays, but replays of the wrong thing. Focusing on two people in the midfield when you've got Piastri right up Russell's backside at the front. You think, I should be watching that maybe first rather than this one. And a bit weird today and a bit all over the place, but, you know, it happens sometimes in these races. My suggestion for sprints is a reverse championship grid with 10 cars and the drivers are the third or reserve driver, says David Silk. I like the ideas of giving the reserve drivers a race, like a rookie sprint championship, kind of thing. That it wouldn't really be rookie, would it? Because you could have like Antonio Giovinazzi, for example, for Ferrari racing. But yeah, just call it I suppose you could just call it the Sprint Championship and just have the reserves. But you can't. The teams are not going to take 4 cars to every race weekend, and I don't think Lewis Hamilton, for example, and George Russell or Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz are going to be too keen on the idea of handing their cars over to reserves and maybe having damage and the extra mileage on the engines and things like that. It would be cool, but I don't think that's I don't think it ever will happen. It would be fun. I'd enjoy that, but I think it's more. I prefer my. Of course I do, because I'm biased, but I prefer my my idea of sort of moving, effectively swapping qualifying and sprint quali around, but also putting quali back where it should be, which is Saturday afternoon, and having sprint quali on Friday afternoon and then sprint race on Saturday morning, because then you kind of get practice, which, you know, unless you like to analyse your data and that, it's generally, for a lot of people I know, and for me as well, it's on in the background for the noise, and you'll look across if something happens, or you'll be listening sort of half while you're doing something else. But you sort of then build with sprint quali through the sprint race, and then you keep building through proper quali, and then through to the race itself on Sunday. That for me is just a much more exciting way of doing it. It just feels a bit too stop-start at the moment, but they'll tweak it again. They'll keep tweaking it. They're determined to have them, and I won't be surprised if we have them at least alternate races in the future. Something they might have them at every race, but I wouldn't be a massive fan of that one. Definitely not. So a couple more then, and then we'll get on to Andretti. Do you think potential 20-lap stints would allow for less lulls per se? Probably, Raul, yeah. Because there's no need for a lull as such, is there? You can push it for the 20 laps on a set of mediums and not have to worry too much about extending stints, because you can only have the bit that concerns me about the 20 laps tyre stints is if we just end up having everyone pitting on the same lap and then everyone stays where they were. You know, you sort of have your lead drivers pit on lap 19, and then your second drivers pit on lap 20, and then your lead drivers pit on lap 39, and then your lead driver. Do you know what I mean? I don't really want that to happen. That's why I think Pirelli have done the right thing in saying, or the FIA have done the right thing in saying, if we mandate it, it needs to be 3 stops, because it will offer some options for people to play around with strategy rather than just everyone stopping at the same time and kind of taking away from that strategy battle, which could be critical tomorrow, because it could be, because a lot of concerns coming into this weekend that it will be a bit processional. That was out the window today, helped again by the tyre offset, but I don't think we're going to get a massive tyre offset tomorrow. Some will start on mediums, some will be chances on softs, and some might give the hards a go, but it won't be a massive tyre offset like today, definitely not. So please do leave a like, by the way. We're 10 away from 100, 331 watching. Please do drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe as well if you are new. Back with the race reaction tomorrow, shortly after the Grand Prix. It might be a slightly shorter one tomorrow for reasons, but I will still be live after the race, so don't worry about that one. So and I saw one more I wanted to answer as well. I think it was it was from Doe. So, Sean, do you think Lewis Hamilton will overtake Perez in the standings in Mexico? I don't know about Mexico. I think I'm trying to get my championship. I can't even find it. There we go. So Perez 223, Lewis Hamilton 194. So I mean, it's game on in that fight, isn't it? It's definitely game on. I don't think Mexico, because I think Perez will pick up a podium in one of the 3 races, Qatar, USA, or Mexico. I can see Red Bull trying to push him on for a win in Mexico. Don't know if that will happen and if Max will let him do that, but assuming Max is at the front, I mean, I know that's a wild call, Max Verstappen leading a Grand Prix, but I don't think he'll do it by Mexico. But I think unless Perez pulls his finger out, and again, I'm not blaming him for today, but unless he pulls his finger out, then Hamilton will have him before Abu Dhabi. No doubt about that in that championship. He's been, you look at their last results. So Sergio Perez, let's go from the summer break. So it was Zandvoort was the first one, wasn't it? So 4th, 2nd, 8th, and DNF. Hamilton 6th, 3rd, and 5th. So actually, apart from the DNF, Perez has been in the points, but he's been out. Singapore was outdone by Hamilton, of course. Bad weekend for Red Bull, that one anyway, but 8th place versus 3rd. Hamilton 6th versus 2nd, so he was actually well off in Italy, but then pretty close in the Netherlands, 4th and 6th. So I think Perez needs to sort himself out. I've defended him a lot this season. I do still think, if anyone's wondering, that he will be in that car next season. I do. Because I don't think... I may have asked you this, actually. I'm going to throw it at you guys. I may have asked you this last week. I can't remember if I did. And if I did, then I apologise. But if not, then I'll throw it at you again for anyone who's maybe new and listening. I see a lot of people saying, drop Perez and put Ricciardo in that Red Bull. What has Ricciardo done in the last 2.5 years that makes anybody think he is going to be better than Perez in that Red Bull? We can talk about winning a race for McLaren at Monza, fine. But Perez won races in the Red Bull. We can talk about, what he achieved at Red Bull all those years ago and what he did at Renault and all of this. That's fine, but that's not recent. There's no guarantees Daniel Ricciardo is going to get in that car and make any difference whatsoever. Controversial opinion. If you're just going to look for a driver to replace Perez because you need to put somebody in there and you're going to go with anybody, surely you chuck a Tsunoda in there or you take a chance on a Lawson. You could argue Ricciardo's a safer pair of hands, but I haven't seen anything in the last 2.5 years. And I say half year, it's a bit harsh because he's done nothing this year. As he said, he's done a couple of races, but you know what I mean. In the last 2.5 years, it makes me go, yes, Daniel Ricciardo is the right man for that job. He may well be. He might get back in that AlphaTauri in Austin, where he may be back, expected to be back. So he may get in that car and be brilliant and beat Tsunoda, and then over the course of next year do a sensational job and absolutely earn the right to be in that car in 2025. But as of today, I don't see why. So, Christian Horner, it feels to me like there's a bit of a difference of opinion. I think Helmut Marko is saying nothing's guaranteed, but Christian Horner is saying that he wants him there and that he's staying for next year. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of a not a conflict, but a bit of a disagreement there. But I don't see why you'd throw Perez out for Ricciardo. If you think Perez is not going to cut it next year and you feel like you need to make a change, that's when you're chasing other drivers. And just for the record, I wouldn't put Tsunoda or Lawson in that car for next year. I just wouldn't. Especially Lawson, that's not going to be good for his career. He's just going to go the same way as an Albon or a Gasly, potentially, where they just get battered by Max Verstappen, who's just on unbelievable form right now, and that's not going to look good. So I think Perez will be lucky to be in the car in 25, but I don't know why you'd make the change for next year. I think Ricciardo, and that's why I think, and again to reiterate the point from the other week, that's why I think that the AlphaTauri driver lineup decision is more about Red Bull 25 than it is AlphaTauri 24. The rumours are, and they are only rumours, that Lawson has been told he will be on the grid in 2025, so in an AlphaTauri, which means that it's a shootout between Tsunoda and Ricciardo for that Red Bull seat, because I'll have to drop one of them. So that's my move. Red G says, why not Tsunoda and Red Bull? Because I want to see... Tsunoda's come a long way from the guy who was crashing quite a lot, hasn't he? Making a lot of mistakes. But I want to see another season from him where he continues to grow, because I think he's grown really, really nicely as a driver and matured really nicely as a driver. I'd just like to see one more year. He's young. He doesn't need to be rushed. Perez is there. I think on his day he'll do a fine job. Look at the start of the season. 2 races, wins in the end in 4. And it's a long time ago, but he can do it. He's just got to... And I think Red Bull have made the point perfectly. He needs to stop trying to beat Max. He needs to stop thinking, I need to beat Verstappen. He just needs to do what he knows how to do, and that is drive and race well and be quick. Perez is he's had a very good Formula One career. He's done a great job in that midfield. He's really not outperformed, because you can't outperform a car, but he's extracted everything from cars. He's been the underdog. He's done some great stuff. He's got to prove himself at Red Bull, but he needs to just drive his race. He needs to stop. Some people might argue that he overtried today, and that's why he's on the outside trying to gain 2 places. Maybe he should have let that go, but he's under pressure. So I just think if Red Bull want him to turn this around, then Helmut Marko needs to stop saying, oh, nothing's guaranteed. He just needs to give him the support as well, which I'm sure he has done privately. So, but yeah, no, I will leave it on Checo, because I could just keep going on and on about it, because I'm just not convinced that Ricciardo's the result is the answer. And I think I just want to see another season from Tsunoda. But he's linked to Aston Martin, isn't he? He's sort of played it down a bit this week and served the team. But it'll be interesting, really, over the next few weeks. I think next year will be interesting, definitely. And I don't even think Perez will lose out mid-season. I think if he stays, he'll get the full season. But after that, he'll be lucky. But I'm confident somebody will pick him up. Definitely, I think there'll be somebody who will pick him up. Maybe Aston Martin. That'd be almost ironic, wouldn't it, if he ends up back at Aston Martin alongside Fernando Alonso in place of Lance Stroll? Perez can walk in that. If that were to happen, we're living in Fantasyland. Come join me. Join me in fiction. Just for a moment. I didn't do it in the accent I should have done. But join me in fiction just for a moment. Perez goes back to Aston Martin. He walks in that door at Silverstone and it's just like, you thought your son was better than me, did you? Probably not the best thing to say to your new boss, but you get my point. A bit of irony there. I quite enjoy that one. Anyway, see what you say, just quickly on the Ricciardo thing, because I'd love an answer to that if anyone has it. Doe says nothing. Robert says they've already paid Perez. Warden says, thank you. That's what I've been saying. I've sat on my own in my office thinking, reading these things on Twitter in particular. You know what Twitter's like. But reading, what has Ricciardo done? Lovely guy. Very good driver. I don't believe he's washed, which is what the kids say these days at all. I think, form is temporary, class is permanent, that old cliche. I still think he's a quality driver, but I don't see why you put him in the Red Bull now when he's done nothing over the last 2.5 years to warrant that. Perez has done more at Red Bull in the last 2.5 years, to give him that chance, see how he gets on next year. It might just be a lull. Bottas in 2018 was absolutely effing horrific, in my opinion, in the second half of 2018. I think he finished fifth was that the year he finished fifth in the Drivers' Championship? Shockingly bad season in a Mercedes like that. He got another chance and came back in 2019 and won the first race of the season. And if it wasn't for some rough luck, would have probably had a much, much stronger season than he did have. And actually, I think he had a pretty decent season, to be fair, anyway. In 2019, that was a year he got his puncture in, Baku, wasn't it, and things like that. So that's just 2018 fifth place. So stick with them, give him a chance. But get Lando Norris as MVD. Apparently that is the rumor, isn't it? That is I say rumor. Alex Albon basically confirming to everybody that he's got an open invitation to Red Bull. So that will be amazing. I think I might do a video in the winter of my dream or ideal or something. I'd love to see 2025 lineups, and I think that would be it. Verstappen and Norris would be very. Do you know what? I'll tell you something else as well. If they sort of go to Norris and say, are you interested? And Norris goes, nah, I'm quite happy at McLaren. I'd be talking to Piastri as well. I wouldn't just be talking to Norris. I'd talk to Piastri as well. Lee Random says nothing. Ruby thinks Ricciardo is overrated. I'll get to Super Chat in a second, Ruby. It's more that Danny gave Max a fight last time. That's what people hope, I feel. Yeah, I get that, Mickey. But at the same time, he's not been in a Red Bull since 2018. Danny Rick, something like that. So, we're now in 2023. If people are still clinging on for that, I'm not saying you, but if people are still clinging on for that, then, come on. Let's put Alain Prost in there as a 3-time world champion. He'd give him a run for his money. No, he wouldn't. Plus you go up against Max Verstappen in a car. Yeah, it's just not. Red Raven says, even if he's safer, he's not necessarily quicker. Put Sonoda in Red Bull, says AJ. Perez already got paid, says Robert again. I've read that now, Robert. It's okay. I think they dropped both, says Brad. Sonoda and Ricciardo, you reckon? I could see a situation if Iwasa has a good year next year, for example, or somebody else in F2 of like Lawson and Iwasa maybe. But AlphaTauri are still a Red Bull Junior team. They still talk about being a Red Bull Junior team. I said this last week or the other week. But they're not the Red Bull Junior team they were a few years ago, are they? Definitely not. So Perez to win in Mexico. Yes, that would be great. I'd love to, if there's one thing I could have this year, not just because it would just give him a bit of confidence, but also because it'd be amazing. It would be great to see Perez win in Mexico. Look at the scenes from a podium. Imagine what he'd do if he won. Andretti then. We want to talk about Andretti, don't we? Don't know if you've heard. The FIA have approved their bid. The FIA feel that Andretti have done a good job in convincing them that they will be good for Formula One. They can grow the sport, that they've got everything in place to be in F1. They're bringing GM with them as a name, which is fantastic. So, yeah, I think the FIA have made the right decision. Here's the thing. There are some people out there, pundits, and I'm sure there are other creators as well, who will look for the popular opinion and run with that and keep everyone happy. I'm going to be the unpopular guy because I will just give you my honest view of this. I think people have been a bit emotional about this. Would I love, on the emotional side, to see Andretti in F1? Yes. Do I want Andretti in F1? Yes, I do. I've said this a lot. I think when it comes to a new Formula One team and being competitive on the grid, financially secure, ambitious, you're not going to get a much safer bet than Andretti. You're not. The problem is F1, as well as being a sport, is also a business. And this is where my potential controversial statement comes in. I agree with James Vowles. I'm going to read you his full quote from Sky F1 if you didn't catch it. He said it to them live. Karun Chandot, Naomi Schiff, Simon Lazenby trying to push the questions. But he said, we are lossy. So they're making a lot of money. We are incredibly lossy. Our accounts have been submitted. You can see them. We lost 20 million last year. You won't see it for another year. But for 2023, you are going to see that number goes up by multiples. And here's why. We're investing in the sport because we believe in the sport. I think for the first time in a long time, the sports come closer together. We have teams fighting each other. Williams is part of, I'm not going to call it the midfield. We are not that good yet. But we are fighting for something. We want to continue that journey. But bear in mind that about half the grid are still lossy. That means someone somewhere, an investor, owners, whatever it may be, are putting in tens of millions. Or in fact, in our case, it's going to go up to multiples above that. What we said at the outset is absolutely add an 11th team, but let's grow the pot so it makes financial sense, not shrink the pot, which is what this is going to do quite significantly. People have said that's greedy. People have said that's selfish. People have said that means F1 isn't a serious sport. Rubbish. It's, in my opinion, that's nonsense. Formula One, like any other major sport, is a business as well. It's got to be financially sustainable, and the teams there have got to be financially secure as well. Football, hate using the analogies like this and comparing the two, but football, when a team gets relegated, they get parachute payments. The Premier League like to make sure those teams are as financially secure as they can be so they don't end up just collapsing with all the wage bills and things like that come with being a Premier League club. When it comes to Formula One, there's a pie. I like to picture a pie, and I'm hungry, so this is a really bad analogy, so I need to think of something like a massive cow pat, because it's just more disgusting. But there's a big pie, and it's divided at the moment up 10 ways. Everyone gets an equal slice of that pie, and then you've got prize money as well on top of that, which obviously the higher you finish, the more you get. The lower you finish, the less you get. But everyone gets something, which wasn't always the way under Bernie. It used to be the top 10 teams, and that's why we had problems with the likes of Marussia and Manor is the same team, Sean. Lotus, or Caterham as they became known, and HRT. When you're not inside the top 10, you're not making the money you need to survive, and that's fine. But this pie is perfect right now for those 10 teams. So they're earning enough, and they're able to then put money back into the sport. They're able to invest in the sport, invest in infrastructure, invest in driver academies, invest in, Mercedes and now Red Bull with powertrains and Ferrari. They can invest in their power unit. It all works as it is now. The problem is if you then divide that pie up 11 ways, everyone gets a smaller slice of the pie. So that pie, I'm so hungry, really needs to be, all I can see on my desk is a massive pork pie and it's not even there. The teams need that pie to be bigger and the sport needs it to be, because people say it reflects bad on F1 if they don't accept Andretti, but how does it look on F1, or how does it reflect on F1 if Andretti come in and we get to 11 teams, but then, what did he say? Half the grid is lossy, he said. So let's say 3 teams then fold because they can't afford to compete because they've lost that slice of the pie or their bigger amount of money, and we lose 3 teams. How does that reflect on F1 going from 11 to 8? If you know what I mean. So it's more important that F1 make sure it's... from what I've read and from the opinions, nobody is saying don't bring Andretti to F1. Nobody is saying they don't want an 11th team. What they're saying is that it's not the right time for that 11th team because they need to make sure that all the teams we have are financially sustainable. Some will say, naturally, that if they're not financially sustainable, then bog off, but then you lose half your grid. What will happen then is there'll be less investment because they'll have to keep hold of their money, which is bad for Formula One. You'll have situations, and he made that point as well, that your sponsors are currently fighting over 10 teams, or your 10 teams are fighting over the same pool of sponsors. That then becomes 11 teams, so it's less money for a Williams or less money for... I'll be honest, I don't really care about AlphaTauri. They probably should have been sold a long time ago, but... Sauber, for example, I totally get what James Vowles is saying, and I'm trying to be sensible brain on. My emotional brain is like, get Andretti on the grid, for fuck's sake, just give them a chance. They absolutely would be brilliant, and I have no doubt, like I say, they are probably the safest bet you're going to get, and what a name to have on the grid. Look at how they perform in everything else they race in. They are brilliant at what they do, but we can't be risking, I've said this so many times before, losing 2, 3, 4 teams because we've let another team in too early, when all you have to do is maybe wait a few more years, make sure the sport is financially sustainable, make sure that pie is big enough for everyone to get a decent slice, including Andretti, and make it even more worthwhile for them, and then bring the 11th, maybe even a 12th team in. The stronger it all is, it makes more sense to wait till it's as strong as it can be, or realistically can be, before you start putting teams and whatnot at risk. And I've not even looked at chat now, and I know there'll be a lot of people that don't like that because they're like, it's sport, we should have 11 teams. The regulations allow up to, I'm gonna make this point as well. They allow up to 10 teams, 12 teams, sorry. The reporting from some people at Sky in particular saying that the rules say there should be 12 teams. They were the words, should be. The rules don't say there should be. They allow for 12 teams, up to 12 teams. If we get 12 teams, great. Actually, I think, I read the regulation, I believe you can actually up to 26 drivers on the grid. I think they allow for no more than 26 in total. But at the moment, that's the FIA regs. That's not the Concord Agreement. But the Concord Agreement is up to 12 teams. It's not that there should be and there is 12 teams. So all this talk of how the teams have benefited from this extra money from these 2 teams that aren't there is sort of true, but it's not really true because those 2 teams don't exist. Up to 12. Again, FIA regulations say up to 26 drivers, 2 drivers per team, which would be 13. But I think that's not in the Concord Agreement. So that's kind of where I stand on it. It's just, and I could waffle for hours about this because I get people's frustration. I understand that. And I just think a lot of people seem to be quite emotional about it. I think there's a lot of hyperbole from the media about it and people sort of talking about how, well, maybe we should look at whether Williams add value to the sport. Who are you to say they do and they don't? You know, Williams do add value to the sport. They've done a lot for the sport. And I think that this is the other controversial take. Mario Andretti is a Formula One legend. Michael Andretti, he raced in F1, with respect. He raced in F1. What he's done with teams as a team boss has been exceptional. But F1 don't owe Andretti anything. Andretti don't owe F1 anything. So for what it's worth, I'll just round. I'm going to summarise this, and I'll come to chat and answer some of your questions that you want to throw at me and tell me I'm an idiot. I don't care, but I'm entitled to my opinion. You're entitled to yours. But just to kind of round it up, I agree with. I think it was FIA Prez who said it. Mohammed bin Sulayem. For what it's worth, I think they will come to an agreement, and Andretti will join the grid. But the F1 teams that we currently have to know that they're secure. So what may well happen, and I can probably see happening, is the current teams say no, apart from Alpine and McLaren, I believe are the ones on board. The current teams say no. I know Williams and Ferrari are opposed to it completely, but they'll say no. FOM will go back to Andretti and say, look, they're saying no, we can't accept 200 million. Can we take it to 4? I think the rumoured number was 600 million, which is absurd, to be quite frank, but 600 million, Andretti might say, not a bloody chance, we'll give you 400. Then they go back with that, and then there'll be a negotiation, and then there'll be an agreement that certain F1 teams get this, and there'll be some kind of compromise reached between the 10 that we've got, FOM and Andretti, and eventually we'll end up with Andretti. But we have to remember as well that Andretti are already working towards joining F1. They are so committed to this, and that is why I want to see them on the grid, because if a team offers you that commitment, give them a shot. This is what I'm saying. I'm looking at it from the perspective of F1 right now, and I agree with James Vowles, but as removing myself from that and as a fan and just making an emotional call and not even thinking about that, give them a shot. Give them a chance. That would be my plea. But negotiate it in a way that suits Andretti, that suits every team on the grid, and that suits FOM and F1. This decision, though, I heard somebody say something, it was along the lines of, this won't be popular with fans. I'm an F1 fan, so I can say this. Fuck us. It's not our business, right? Do we want an 11th team? I'm pretty sure if I say to chat, do you want Andretti on the grid? The vast majority of you will say yes, so I'll do it. Do you want Andretti on the grid? Yes or no? Most of you are going to say yes. I agree. But the decision shouldn't be, we have to do it because the fans want it. The decision should be, we're going to do it because we can make sure the teams are sustainable, the sport is sustainable, and it's sustainable for Andretti as well. So that, find a compromise. I know Formula One is not always the best at compromising. Sometimes it's brilliant, but most of the time, not so much. That's what they need to do. So that's my little chunter about that over. So just to again, take 10 minutes of waffle and put it into what could have been an easy 2-minute summary. Absolutely want Andretti on the grid, 100%, but it's got to be done in a way that makes sure that no other current teams are at risk, a way that's attractive as well to Andretti and that works for everybody, because I agree with James Vowles and I want Andretti. That's kind of the point. And that's not sitting on the fence. I've told you what I think. We have to be looking at this from both sides of the argument. This isn't as simple as, oh, somebody wants to join, let them in. The last time we did that, it wasn't quite as simple as that, but the last time teams were let on the grid and their financial security wasn't guaranteed and the current teams weren't all guaranteed, we ended up with a couple of mobile chicanes in the HRTs. Caterham Lotus Caterham/Lotus, or Lotus/Caterham, Virgin/Marussia/Manor, fighting over 10th place in the constructors, and they never really went anywhere because they couldn't survive. And I know they were promised a lot from Bernie, if you believe the stories, but that didn't work. So they need to make sure it's done in a way that makes sure that Andretti will survive, which I think they would, honestly. Like I say, pretty safe bet. And that the current teams all survive as well. And I think there is a way to do that. There will be a way to do it. There are some, you wouldn't believe it sometimes, but there are some very clever people behind the scenes at F1 and FOM and the teams who will be able to negotiate something that works for everybody. But I think eventually that they will let them in. But I think it's for 26, so they've probably got Andretti. I think there's still talk about not allowing teams to work on their 26 cars till 25 anyway. So Andretti have got, there's a good, maybe not a year, but getting towards a year now where this can be negotiated. There's a whole winter for them to sit down and talk about it and try and work it out. And it may well be that we find out next summer break it's all fine. It may well be they reject it, but just be sensible with it. But I don't want to see people shut out from F1, I guess is my point. But I don't agree that F1's not a sport for trying to look after the sport. I think that's mad to me. The vast majority said yes, by the way. I'm going to scroll up and see you all calling me dickhead, because people disagree with me. It's just, and I must say as well, can I just say, James Vowles, if they need a team spokesperson for the teams, obviously, nominate James. You know how you've got like the GPDA with George Russell? If you need a GPTA, Grand Prix Teams Association, James Vowles is your man to do the talking, because he's bloody brilliant. He really, really is. He puts it so reasonably. Even I think there'll be a lot of you who will disagree with what I've said and may disagree with what James Vowles says, but probably sit there and go, he has got a point there, to be fair. He's made it very, very well, which is fair enough. I think GM's would be a good thing. Bit cheeky to come out and say, we don't want you, Andretti, we're against you joining. By the way, can we have your engine manufacturer? Bit of a piss take, that one, I'll give you that. But yeah, Cadillac specifically. F1 still need to approve it. The other thing, actually, no, while I'm just chuntering, by the way, one other thing, I've seen a lot of it, and it's, I think part of it is people like to play cards like this when it doesn't go the way they hope it does. But a lot of people are saying it's that F1 is anti-American. Bullshit. I'm looking at the calendar right here, and I can tell you that F1 is not anti-American. We race at 3 races in the United States. We race another race in North America. It's not the United States of America, but it's still America, in Canada. We also race in Mexico as well. So to say that F1 is anti-American, American driver and, whether you like it or not, and another American team on the grid in Haas, F1 is not anti-American, not to mention who owns them. So it's not an anti-American thing. It's F1 just being sensible. Just like if you criticise Sergio Perez for having a crap weekend, it doesn't mean that you have an anti-Mexican agenda, which is something I've also been accused of, for saying that Perez had a crap weekend in Japan because Perez had a crap weekend in Japan, and apparently now I hate Mexican people, which is bullshit. You'll probably not find a bigger defender of Sergio Perez than me. I love the internet so much. Find myself agreeing with Red Raven. If Andretti can get in, then who physically can, or can't get in? Sorry, who physically can? That's why they have the anti-dilution fund. Yeah, no, I didn't see that from Red Raven, but yeah, if that's what I'm saying about Andretti being probably the safest bet you're going to get. If they're not going to make it, you're right. who is. But again, I think they will. I can't see how F1 doesn't come to an agreement on this one. This isn't an HRT 2.0. This is Andretti. You know, it just seems a little bit crazy to me. Yes, I love pork pie. Shocking, I know. Fat old man, not even old. Loves a pork pie. Sounds as complicated as having a new child, says a Yinka. I don't know about that. Well, no, it probably is more complicated than having a new child. The question I have back to James Vowles, do we put line in the sand and say any growth from now on is the 11th team? Would they sign up for that, says Raoul. That's an interesting concept. That's a very interesting concept. Yeah. I don't know if they would, but no, do you know what? That's a fair point, Raoul, actually. I'm going to say they won't, because I know what F1's like, but that would be very reasonable, I think, to say that, you know, you're still getting your normal slice of the pie, stomach grumbles again, but now everything that we're gaining will be for bringing an 11th team. That kind of makes sense. But does anyone think Andretti buying a current team would be a better idea than expanding to an 11th team, says Robert Lewis? Yes, I always thought the AlphaTauri thing would have been a brilliant shout. However, apparently, I can't remember who it was now. I'm sure somebody will tell me in chat, but another bid came in, and they spoke to AlphaTauri about buying a team, and I think the quote was $800 million. I think it was getting on for $1 billion to buy AlphaTauri, and they were like, that's just not realistic to buy the team. So, I mean, you're going to have to put a lot of money in, probably more than $1 billion, to make it work, but the team were like crazy money to buy. So, Novelty Robot says, please like the stream. Yes, please do like the stream. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much. Yes, buy team instead if Williams is losing so much, sell to Andretti. No, see, Williams, unless I've interpreted wrong, Williams are losing so much because they're investing in the sport. What they're saying is, if you bring in an 11th team, they're not going to be doing that anymore, or teams won't be doing that anymore, and that's bad for everyone. They need to grow the pie. I'm going to stop saying pie. No more pie talk, please. I'll be sick. Sick with hunger. My comment would... So Red Raven's kind of built on that comment. Says, well, my comment would then be exclude Haas from the championship, force Alpine to sell the Enstone team to Andretti. Problem solved. Probably what Eccleston would have done. Yeah, Eccleston would have just turned up one day with Andretti going, they've got 2 cars, we're off. Wasn't it sort of on topic, but wandering away a little bit? Wasn't Haas approached by Andretti about buying the team? And Haas went, nah, not happening. I seem to recall a story around that. Those conversations happening. But I just on the Andretti thing, Williams Andretti or Andretti Williams, that's what you could call the team. I think that's pretty cool. DeRilton are doing a good job at Williams with the way they're sort of putting the right people in the right place with James Vowles and everything else going on and the money they're willing to put in. But they are ultimately an investment group. There's going to come a point where they're going to want to return on that, isn't there? So they may well sell up one day. So maybe that's what Andretti need. If F1 turn around and say no, maybe that's what Andretti does. Just has a word with people like DeRilton and those who might be up for selling and try to find a way in that way. I am confident, even if F1 say no, Andretti will find a way on the grid one way or another because they seem pretty determined. They really, really do. But yeah, no. So they're just to confirm the 26 car grid thing. That's the FIA regulations. They're up to 26 cars. So that'd be 13 teams, but the Concord agreement is 12. So I don't know why they don't align like that, unless I've misread it. But I don't care about Williams. Honestly, they are not Williams since Frank left, says Mr. Bungle. I think I've said that as well. I don't have the same feeling for Williams that I had when it was family run. I do care about Williams. I care about all the teams on the grid, really. I don't care about AlphaTauri in the sense that, when I've said earlier, I don't care about AlphaTauri. I don't care in the sense that Red Bull are always going to support them financially anyway, so it's not like they're in massive danger. Although I think Red Bull put less in now than they probably would have done. But by the way, on AlphaTauri, we should, it is expected, reported, rumoured, gossiped about, whatever, that we should get the answer as to what their name's going to be in COTA in a couple of weeks' time. So we should find out if it's going to be Alpha Adidas Tauri, Toro Bosso. I said the other week, the rumour at the time was that it won't be either of those. It will be a Red Bull drinks related thing. So, you know, Red Bull sugar free, Red Bull grapefruit. If there's Red Bull grapefruit, there should be. If there isn't, I don't know if there is, but there you go. I don't drink Red Bull I don't drink energy drinks. They're disgusting. So it should be announced in the US. So that could be interesting. Triple header, actually, isn't it? There's a week off after tomorrow, and then it's triple header, which is interesting. Any more comments on Andretti? Can I just say, actually, I don't know what people have been like at home. I don't know how many people have thrown things at me through their monitors or whatever. But in the chat, thank you. And I'm not surprised because you lot are generally brilliant. But thank you for being, people have different opinions, but there's nobody being abusive or, frankly, pathetic about it. You know what people are like. So thank you to people just sort of giving your view that may differ from mine or agreeing with me and not being an a-hole about it. I appreciate that as always. So thank you. We've got a great community here, I think. Definitely. I say 800 million is undervalued. Someone like Andretti would make that back in sponsorships in 2 to 3 years, says Warren M. I think for Andretti that would be a good deal. I don't think that would be a problem for them, 800 million to $1 billion to buy a team. But I think this other person, I don't know what, they're not, I don't think they're as big as Andretti. I can't remember who it was, but they're not as big as Andretti. So I think that's probably why. I'll tell you what we'll do actually. Talk about Logan Sargent today. We talked about his spin. I saw somebody ask me earlier about this one. I do think he's under pressure, yes. James Vowles has publicly supported him, but the simple reality is with Logan Sargent, there's just too many mistakes. I don't know if it's that he's trying too hard. I don't know if the pressure's getting to him, and maybe that pressure will be lifted if the team were to just say, we're going to give you one more year. But the team also, to counter that, can't give him one more year because I don't think he's earned one more year. And I saw the argument a few times as well, and it's discussed on TV too. It's sort of, he is a rookie, we've got to give him a chance. But he is a rookie 16 races into his career. We're in the 17th race weekend. Because Imola, it would be 18, wouldn't it, if we had Imola, but we didn't. But 17th race weekend. Once upon a time, it was 16 races for an F1 season. So actually, and I know F1's come a long way since then. He has actually had, in older F1 terms, early 2000s, had a full season in that respect. And decisions were made about drivers back then after 16 races. So I don't see why the decision can't be taken either way on Logan Sargent now. I think he's better than he's showing in F1 as a driver. Going back sort of through his junior career stuff, I've not really, I'll be honest, I don't really know a lot about Logan Sargent's junior career. I am doing it from the old Wikipedia because, but it's not awful. A few third place finishes in championships and things, but I kind of feel for him in the sense that it was a year sooner than they wanted to, wasn't it? That's clear because Nick De Vries was supposed to be, or Williams expected Nick De Vries to join, and then he took the AlphaTauri off. Oh, I wonder how he feels on that now. Sorry, a bit of a random tangent there. I wonder what Nick De Vries thinks now about that, taking that chance and going to AlphaTauri and not taking the Williams driver. He got the full season at Williams. Penny for his thoughts on that one. But he turned down Williams, didn't he, for AlphaTauri, and that made them go, well, we're going to have to put Logan Sargent in then. I don't think they wanted to. So I sort of feel for him there. And maybe, I also think, again, potentially not a popular opinion, I also think Williams probably will I still think they will give him next year just because people talk about Lawson. They're not going to loan Lawson for a year. They're not going to loan Mick Schumacher. Maybe give him the year and see who's available next season because you've got to think of all the drivers up for grabs at the end of 24. I'm not saying they're going to be landing your Leclercs and your Sainzes, but, if Perez becomes available, Perez to Williams alongside Albon. Could be quite a tasty lineup, that one. And that might be good for Williams and for Perez, actually, out of the limelight a little bit. Or out of the spotlight a little bit. But then I suppose you could actually then make the counter-argument that if they're going to look for drivers in 2024 for 25, with all those drivers becoming available, maybe they could loan a Liam Lawson for a season because they might be looking somewhere else anyway. So it's a tricky one. But I think he's been battered by Albon in every respect. Except for physically. That's not happening. I think he has been well beaten, but do you give him another season if you're running Williams? And then if he doesn't step it up, just say, let him know early next year, middle of next year, if he's not stepping up, he won't get another season. Then you go and look at who's available on the market still, like a Perez, for example. Do you wait and see, or do you loan somebody and do the same thing? It's interesting, isn't it? Because Vowles is giving him public support, and they've given him targets to hit. And I realised having this conversation tonight, and he might have the best race ever tomorrow and pick up a point or something and surprise us all. But I forgot Ruby's super chat. Sorry, Ruby. Ruby says, Lewis Hamilton P2 in the championship. Great overtakes today. Particularly enjoyed the sights move. That was a good move. By the way, what was just thinking asking to stop today? Asked Ruby. Thank you very much for your super chat. I think I covered that earlier, actually. I understand why George asked, but as soon as you look at the timing screens, when I'm listening to the radio in my headphones on the F1 feed, and then I look at the TV and I'm like, no, because you're just going to be out the points, George. you're just going to be out the points. There's no point. But then, Russell doesn't have all the information, all the data and the pace and all that. That's why he's relaying things. So he's right to ask the question, but the team were never going to stop him, if that makes sense. So, yeah. But yeah, on Sargent, I'm not sure. On Lance Stroll, I think I saw I'm trying to think who it was. It was somebody. I can't remember. It was another creator or somebody posted on Twitter. If you were Lawrence Stroll, what would you do? And I think that's a really stupid question, because if I were Lawrence Stroll, I'd keep my son in the car. I'm being a pedant and I don't care, because I've bought that team so my son gets an opportunity to race in F1. So if I was Lawrence Stroll, I'd keep Lance Stroll in the car. I'd sit him down and have a word and tell him to pull his finger out his arse and stop being ridiculous. But if I'm team boss at Aston Martin making the big decisions, there's not a cat in hell's chance I keep him in the car next year. And this isn't to do with yesterday. People calling for him to be dropped because he pushed his, was it physio or whoever it was? Lance Stroll should not be dropped from F1 because he pushed his physio. If Lance Stroll is dropped from F1, it should be because of his poor performances this year. Interesting stat from Sky, though. Apparently, on average, he's only 0.3 off Fernando Alonso in qualifying. I haven't checked that, and last time I didn't check a Sky stat. That turned out to be bollocks, which was the last stream we did. Me and my McLaren's first double podium since Button and Hamilton, which was nonsense. It wasn't, was it? It was Ricciardo and Norris. But apparently that's all it is. And if that's the case, then clearly he's still got some speed. He's just not demonstrating it. And I'm just looking at his results from the last few races. I mean, he's only on 47 points. He's at risk of being done by Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. He's only just got over double the points of Alex Albon in a Williams. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso, and yes, I know it's Fernando Alonso, has 175 points. So it's all right being on average 0.3 off Fernando Alonso in quali, but you're over 100 points behind him in race trim. And it's not that, Lance Stroll has had some moments of bad luck this year, but it's not all been bad luck. He's been making mistakes. He's been driving badly. He's not been quick enough, crashing. He's got to take responsibility for that. And I think his outburst yesterday, I know that F1 social media, everything gets blown massively out of proportion. Does he need to be shoving his physio like that? No, of course he doesn't. Is it worth the kick-off that some people have gone with? I don't think so. But then I said that I said the same after Verstappen shoved Ocon. Very different circumstances, barely comparable, but I'm just making a point. Angry driver, pumping with adrenaline, frustrated, gives him a shove. We've seen far worse in F1 over the years. It doesn't. That for me is raw anger and emotion. It's not necessary, and I hope that somebody, and I'm sure they did, at the team took him to one side and sort of said, "Look, we get you frustrated, but there's no need to do that. There's absolutely no need for that. You've also damaged your steering wheel, which I think costs quite a lot of money at a time. But I don't. Maybe I don't know. I'm 37. I'm not old, but maybe I'm just a bit more old school in that regard, that I don't have a problem with drivers shoving each other around, but I do draw the line at shoving team personnel around like that. It seems a little bit very unnecessary. So I'm sure somebody did speak to him, but I don't think it's worth the big fuss that some people are making it out to be. Again, it's hyperbole, isn't it? The media, I think the media are bored this year and they just have to write something over nothing. But no, I remember doing the stream. This is a flashback a little bit. Why not? I remember doing the stream after that race in Brazil, and I had Stuart on with me. And Stuart is a lovely guy. He's very, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't. Try to work in a way that isn't horrible. Quite a. Is passive the right word? Very much wants to. Prefers to sit down and talk about a dispute rather than lash out. Whereas me, I'm probably more likely to give somebody who's annoyed me a shove than I am to sit down and say, "Should we have a coffee and sort out our problems?" Mellow. Mellow and grounded, Red Raven, and I'm angry and nutter. No, I don't go around punching people. That's not what I mean. But if I'm out and somebody shoves me, then I'm going to shove them back. I'm not going to go, "Hey, stop it. Let's talk about this. Let me get you a drink and we'll chat." That's not me. I'm going to push back. I'm also going to rant crazily over nothing. But I remember doing that stream with him, and I know somebody else was supposed to be on with us, and they kind of got frustrated with everything on Twitter, and they pulled out of the stream because they're like, I can't come on the stream because I'll say something. And then sort of listening, and I've got Stuart kind of going, that's disgusting, and that's completely unacceptable, and Max needs to be dealt with. And I'm sort of like trying to play it a little bit sort of down the middle, like, oh yeah, I totally see your point. But all I'm thinking is, it's just a push, guys. Come on, it's not. If he'd punched him and then pinned him on the ground and started kicking the crap out of him, yeah, let's have him dealt with. But it's a shove from a guy who he felt at the time cost him the race win. I mean, that incident did cost him the race win, but it's not like it's push. All I'm saying is that Lance Stroll shouldn't have pushed his engineer. There's no need for it, or his physio. There's no need for it, but angry, frustrated drivers are going to do that. His interview afterwards as well, I am defending him on this one, and I'll defend every driver on this one. It's part of the without saying it's one of those right-wing YouTube channels who's like, the mainstream media, but every sporting event now, it finishes and then there's a camera or in their face and a microphone shoved under their nose, and it's like, how are you feeling? And it's like, they do it because they say they want the raw emotion, but they also do it because they know that in some situations you're going to get a moment like Lance yesterday where he's just so blunt about it and so fed up, and then they can make their articles and get lots of clicks online and make a big fuss over it, when actually it's just a frustrated driver. And I look at Lance Stroll, my takeaway from that wasn't, oh God, he's such a spoiled brat. My takeaway from that was that he's done. He looked like a driver yesterday. I haven't seen the interview today, but I saw the interview yesterday, and all I saw was a lad who's just had enough. That was how I read that. I might be wrong. I probably will be wrong. We will find out if he turns up next season. But that was my read of that. I didn't sit going, "Oh, spoilt brat, you're so selfish," or anything like that, like a lot of people did. I just sort of went, I think he's had enough. I think he's realised he just doesn't want to be here, or it's not working, or whatever. I don't think the tennis rumours are true. I keep saying that. I think that's bollocks, but funniest rumour I've ever read. Lance Stroll's going to do Wimbledon next year. That's not the rumour, but yeah, he just looked like somebody who had just had enough. And I sympathise with him because I think I'd have had enough. But who's that on? Do you know what I mean? Whose responsibility is that? You're in a car. There's no way Fernando Alonso has a far better car than Lance Stroll. His dad owns the team. There's no way. They'll have more or less an equal car. Fernando Alonso is a phenomenal talent, but whose fault is it that you only have 47 points on the board? It's not Fernando's fault. It's occasionally would have been the team's fault with bad strategy calls and things, but it's not all the team's fault. It's not F1's fault. That's on you. So if you're frustrated with F1 and frustrated with your performance and you're done with it, that's fine, but that's on you. You need to perform better. And I've been a big defender of Lance. I don't think he deserves all the stick he gets. I think he absolutely deserves a stick for this season. He's not been good enough. But there has to be, as well, a sort of a level-headed way of looking at it, in that the car he has now is not where it was at the start of the season. So making up those points to Fernando is always going to be difficult anyway, because the car's not where it was at the start of the season. But he should still be he shouldn't be qualifying. I know my famous Lance Stroll line. He's just no good. He just needs to get his Saturday sorted. I keep using it, but it just doesn't seem to work. Well, he's 17th, and then he was well down in the sprint as well. That's kind of not. That car should be top 10 most weekends in the shootout. Both your McLarens, both your Red Bulls, both your Ferraris, both your Mercedes. You'd expect one or both of your Aston Martins to be in there every weekend. So Stroll needs to be better, and that's on him. That's not on anybody else. So, yeah. No decisions, by the way, on the Hulkenberg, keep forgetting Hulkenberg, Ocon, and Perez incident. I don't think we can get that, so I'm going to be wrapping up in just a moment. One more thing as well on Aston Martin, and please, if you're a Fernando Alonso fan, do not take offence to this. Let me finish my point first. I do not want Fernando Alonso to finish on the podium again this year. Hear me out, okay? This is just a random point to end on, more or less. I'm going to see if I can do this and get this on screen, full screen. Or Aston Martin for that matter, but certainly not Fernando Alonso. The reason, that's false. You're going to look at that editing on stream. Look at that just for you. You can see my terrible editing all happening as we go. But the reason, frankly, with respect to him and with respect to Aston Martin, is because he has no wins, no poles, and 7 podiums, which makes him 007, and that is so fitting for an Aston Martin driver. There is no reason, it's pathetic, and I appreciate that, but there is no reason other than that I want Fernando Alonso not to get a podium this year. Is because on my graphics, he's 007, and not only does that sum up Aston Martin perfectly, it also sums up Fernando Alonso. The name's Alonso. Fernando Alonso. 007. There you go. A random point to more or less end on. It doesn't matter. Any questions before we wrap up, by the way? I've not done much Q&A tonight because I didn't do any content last week, and I probably won't next week either, if I'm being honest. I will be back for the USA and the triple header, of course. But so I've just wanted to waffle a bit because I've not spoken to you much since. So if you've got anything you'd like to say, please do let me know in chat. A few people understand now. People are like, what are you on about? How dare you take away Fernando's podiums? But that's what I do. Thank you again to Ruby for your super chat. Says, I might be in the minority, but I like seeing that he cares and is not just accepting his bad performance. I wanted to give him a hug. Thank you very much, Ruby. I'll give him a hug, a virtual hug for Lance Stroll. Now, I've said that. I think you've been here long enough now, Ruby. You'll have heard this before, but you know, Vettel was it last year or the year before, storming out of a drivers' meeting? People gave him criticism for that and moaned about it. And Lance Stroll yesterday and Max Verstappen on Ocon. We can't. People moan all the time. These drivers are too robotic. You can't moan at their robots and then moan when they show any passion. It's one or the other. So, oh my God, random pointing out on Fernando, and his number is a 007. There you go. Fernando, you won't be listening, but if you were, don't get another podium, mate. You can have some more next year. Lance Stroll into WEC now that Aston Martin will race the Valkyrie there. Yeah, that was. I was actually going to come to that, Red Raven. I was kind of coming round to that. I was talking about Lance Stroll, and then kind of got waylaid by my Alonso point. No, I would. I think if Lance Stroll were to leave Aston Martin F1, he will go and do something else for Aston Martin, and World Endurance might be somewhere where he's happier. I think as Lance Stroll talked before about WEC and endurance racing and things, that he'd be quite interesting. So maybe that'd be good for him. So yeah, I'll say that, Red Raven. Yeah, I think if he leaves Aston Martin, I do think he'll be in the car next year. But if they do decide, maybe that would line up quite nicely for Yuki Tsunoda, actually. If they do decide at the end of next year that they're going to let him go and they'll move him on to something else, I think WEC could be good for him. So I'll go with you on that one. Will Perez start from the pit lane tomorrow, says Warren M. It's a good point. Officially, no. We've not had any word on that. But no, he got quite a whack, didn't he? Quite a lot of work's going to need to be done on that car overnight. Something to keep an eye on. I haven't seen the damage. I need to see if there's a damage thing. If there's anything. I'll say, check my emails. See if they've put a list. They don't usually list damage. Usually. No, nothing from Red Bull, actually. Weirdly. Very odd. A lot of stuff in my box about Verstappen. My inbox about Verstappen. No. So, yeah, no. Probably not. But there will be a lot of work going on overnight. But that's something to keep an eye on in the morning. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. If nothing else, I'll be able to keep an eye out for that one now. And I did see someone say who wins tomorrow. I've lost my cursor, so I can't. There we go. Who asked that one? Who wins tomorrow, Sean? That's Robert Lewis. What do you reckon in chat? Who's going to win tomorrow? I'm going to go. Well, my pick on Thursday was Verstappen. I've seen nothing today in terms of pace in that 19 laps that suggests that if he gets off the line first, he won't just disappear and win that race. If he retires, it's game on. I'd like it to be Piastri because then he gets a proper win to go with his sprint win. but I think Verstappen will. And if you watch the preview, by the way, thank you very much for your support. But if you watch the preview, then I'm just going to say this. I really wish I stuck to my guns on the predictions. Very wrong on Leclerc, wasn't I, for pole? I really wish I stuck with those, but there you go. Vest says, yeah, Lawrence just goes around buying different motorsports teams for his son. There you go. He'll be lawnmower racing soon for Aston Martin. Do you think Red Bull will give Perez free reign to race Verstappen freely, says Rocket? I'll give you my sensible answer. Yes, I think they would. My honest answer, he's going to have to get a bit closer to him to force him to make that decision. He's nowhere near his pace at the moment. So even if they would, they don't have to make that decision at the moment because he's not quick enough. I'd like to think he'd be able to take Mexico, and maybe Max might help him with that. But again, he needs to be closer to him. He's nowhere near him. So they would, but I don't see it happening, to be honest. I'm not going to read that one. A couple more then, and then I'm going to wrap it up for this evening. Norris, I don't want him to be the next Heifeld. Do you know, big man Pat, I thought when I was watching that, I saw Piastri sort of winning, and Norris made his mistake in quali and then got stuck in traffic. And then I think back to Russia and some other times. I think it was another time this year where he had a shot at the win, and I thought, I hope he doesn't end up like a Jenson Button type character where everyone talks about him as potential generational talent, and then he just always seems to look out of the win. Do you know what I mean? I hope I'm sure he won't, but I just thought today, it would just be Ricciardo won at Monza, Piastri's won in the sprint today, Norris could, and some would argue should have won in Russia. You think, is this going to be one of those drivers that just always looks out? I hope not. I really do. Hi Sean, hope you're well, mate. I love pork pies, but one question: do you like custard creams? That's Scott Barnes. Hello, Scott. Custard creams? No. Dun dun dun. That's outrage. That'll cause outrage. Chocolate digestives for me are one of my favourites. Chocolate digestives after they've been in the fridge. Incredible. Or jammy Dodgers. I don't like custard creams. Ruby says, who doesn't like custard creams? Me, Ruby. That's who doesn't like. Yeah, I said it will be a short stream today. It's been nearly 2 hours again, so it's just lovely talking to you all. I need to do more really, but yeah, pink wafers are weird. I like them, but they're weird. Wing cap. So there you go. Daniel says, yeah, George wanted to box. I would flip that around random. I say bourbons are better than custard creams. There you go. Has there been any news on the possible 3-stop thing, says Del? Nothing official yet. No, nothing from Pirelli. I'll just have a check for you though, Del. Now you reminded me, mate. Hope you're okay. Good to see you, as always. Let's just have a look at what we've got. I don't think there's anything from... Who makes the tyres? Pirelli. There we go. Who makes the tyres? Exciting sprint with split strategy, but the patience of the medium runners was eventually rewarded. Congratulations to Max Verstappen. Oscar Piastri is a winner in F1. Oh, good on Pirelli. They've I can't use that word. I always say asterisk. I just said it right and then I said it wrong. There you go. Weird. No, nothing yet. So nothing official yet. So I think we'll probably hear in the morning, to be honest, on that one, because they're going to need to... I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure what analysis they can do. We didn't really get 19 hot laps, did we? So that'll be an interesting one. Yeah. I think I'm going to wrap it up there because we're talking about biscuits now and other things. But C64 says 1,000. That's also the number of biscuits in the supermarket. That's right. It's biscuit talk time. I love that Tyre Talk's become a thing. And although, as I've touched on before, we're not going to do it tonight, but as I've touched on before, there will be some pretty significant changes to content next year. I hope there's somewhere I can slot them in on the channel. Because they're always stupid. I still think I might open these last 5 up to you guys, though. Pop a thing in the community section and get you guys to just give people a shout out for them. Don't forget as well, by the way, very quickly, if you are in the US and you want a bit of a deal on your US Grand Prix tickets, go to the preview and go to headout.com via the link in the description and use the code F1word500 at checkout. And it's 500 $500 for Turn 4 tickets, including the welcome party for the weekend. So it's weekend tickets at Turn 4 in the grandstand for $500, which still sounds like a crazy amount of money, but I think there's a $400 and something discount as well from head out on top of that. So it's quite a big saving. So it's like a $500 instead of over $1,000. So go check that one out. I think there's a few still available. I checked this morning, but the free tickets went very, very quickly, as they always do. But they are over there if you're in the US and you fancy doing it a bit cheaper than it would do. But that's, that's not, they're not sponsoring this stream. I just thought I'd point in that direction just because some people might have missed it. I'm usually busy on Thursday, so I missed most of the preview, but thank you for going. The weekend timing in UK, it's always so helpful. I do UK, track, and EDT on the previews. Thank you very much. And Red Raven says, last comment, I swear, Burt Mylander will cross the line first. Don't know who wins, but I'm predicting a safety car finish. What a way to end. That's Red Raven's bold prediction for tomorrow's race. A safety car finish, and I'm sure there'll be no controversy whatsoever and people immediately drawing conclusions to something that happened a long time ago. Not that long ago in life, I suppose, but yeah, there you go. I suppose, didn't Burt lead the most? Yeah, oh, Warden just asked it. Yeah, didn't he lead the most laps in the sprint? Suppose technically he did. That is it for this one then. I will be back tomorrow shortly after the race with the race reaction. That one will be a little bit shorter, I'm afraid, for reasons. So maybe that's why I've gone a bit longer tonight. Why not? But yes, I will be back tomorrow with the race reaction. Don't forget to drop a like as well. 135 likes, 114 still here. Thank you for your super chats as well today. Really, really appreciate those. Great support for the channel as always. Don't forget to subscribe as well. Lots of content coming up between now and the end of the season, and big changes coming over the winter and next year as well. So worth sticking around to see what Sean changes and how many people he can upset with those changes over time. You can follow me on social media as well for what it's worth. At F1 Word and the F1 Word as always, and you can support the channel through Super Chats, PayPal, Streamlabs, and Patreon as well, a little bit more longer term. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.